Philadelphia Flyers are in one of the most enviable positions in the entire NHL right now, as a first round playoff series win over the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 6 at home gets them right into the second round against the Carolina Hurricanes. And ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are officially playing with house money. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about the big performers in Game 6 and the Pittsburgh series as a whole. We're going to talk about the things that the Flyers need to worry about going into this Carolina series. And overall, we're going to talk about the vibe of this team in general, a series into the playoffs, a couple weeks removed from a very, very good regular season, and overall what they need to be worrying about moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been enjoying the videos, please make sure to subscribe. It's completely free to you. A bunch of the people that watch this channel aren't subscribed already, and it helps you stay up to date with me, stay up to date with the Philadelphia Flyers as a whole, and it helps me out a ton, if I'm going to be honest with you. So please make sure to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed. And we're going to jump right on into it. The Philadelphia Flyers move past the Pittsburgh Penguins in round one and are officially set to face the Carolina Hurricanes in round two of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, this Penguins series was really fun to watch at times and almost unwatchable at others, but the Flyers have been an amazing team throughout the playoffs thus far. All right. Most notably, we got to start with him, Dan Vladar, with a 42 save shutout, solidifying him as having the most saves by a Flyers goaltender in series clinching games ever. Yeah, ever. This performance was absolutely amazing. This is far and away the capstone to his entire season. I know I said this a couple of days ago about his first shutout in this series, but this shutout makes him look like an entirely different player than he was if you saw him on any of the teams that he was on before this year on the Flyers. All right. Vladar has been a phenomenal player for the Flyers all year. He's been far and away their team MVP, and he's even managed to land himself some spotlight on a national stage, getting NHLPA Playoff Performer of the Series for the Flyers versus Penguins series, 2 shutouts, a 161 GAA, a 937 save percentage. He's been an absolute monster in net, and the Flyers would not be in the position that they're in right now with anybody else in that backstop behind them, especially given that his teammates have talked about it before this point, and it's the fact that he's been such a leader to this team. He's been amazing on how he comes into games, his confidence going into them, the fact that even after game 4, after game 5, when the Flyers lost, he was telling his teammates, he was telling the media, he was telling fans, calm down, we have this in the bag, we're not worried about this right now. This team is still strong, we're not shaken by these losses. He's been an absolute monster for the Flyers and net. He's been amazing for them outside of games. He's been an amazing leader in the locker room, and you can genuinely see the adjustments happen on the team, and as they get more comfortable to having him behind them, and this team has so much confidence oozing from it that it really makes it incredibly easy to like this team overall and like Vladar as a player. Now, that being said, going up against Carolina, the Flyers are not going to be able to just depend on Dan Vladar and kind of rely on him in a sense. And I'm putting rely in very heavy air quotes because I don't mean rely on him as in he's going to win you the entire series. However, as we saw with Linus Ullmark in the Senators series against the Carolina Hurricanes, amazing and elite goaltending is not all you need to beat this Hurricanes team. This Hurricanes team is a very, very good team. Some people would say, based on the defense that Ottawa has in front of them, Ullmark's play against the Hurricanes might have been better than Vladar's play against the Penguins, which is going to sound crazy given that Vladar had 2 shutouts and Ullmark lost all 4 games, but with the defenses that were in front of them, Ullmark played absolutely out of his mind. He played the best hockey that he's played probably all year, and still the Senators couldn't manage even 1 win. So if this tells us anything, it's that the Flyers not only need to continue the great defense and the great goaltending, but they need to score goals, okay? The Flyers have, I'm not going to say that they've been horrible at scoring so far, but especially if you look at their previous matchups against the Hurricanes, and especially that matchup very late into the regular season against the Hurricanes when they had some of their AHLers on the roster, the Flyers are not the strongest matchup into the Hurricanes, all right? That playoff clinching game from the Flyers late into the regular season was a game that ended up going to a shootout, and the Flyers won in the shootout at the very end. So it's almost a it's almost kind of a showing as to what this series could look like. If you really want to go back and watch that game again and look at some of the stuff there, you can kind of see the intricacies of how these teams match up into each other. But that being said, there are some players that the Flyers are really going to need a lot out of, and one of them, far and away, is Vladar, though they're going to need help everywhere else. And everywhere else amounts to, every other player on the team. Who else has been phenomenal for the Flyers so far? Travis Sanheim passes the eye test and the numbers test with flying colors. All right, he's been far and away. He probably has been either the second, third, or fourth best player on the Flyers right now, depending on how you think of some of the other guys we're going to talk about later today. But Sanheim's been an absolute monster. 2 goals in the Penguins series, an assist, some really, really nice moves, some nice defensive play. He's been overall an amazing player for the Flyers in this series. And if Sanheim continues to produce at this level and play at the level that he's at right now, the Flyers are the Flyers are in good hands on the defensive end, at least from his pairing. All right. That being said, we turn and we kind of pivot and look at the rest of the Flyers players. We're going to notice a couple of things looking at these guys numbers wise. Number one, that number for Dan Vladar is insane. We already talked about him. Number two, the line that I hyped up the most yesterday prior to the game, that line with Michkov, Cates, and Alex Bump on it, looks from the numbers here like it was a much worse line than it was. If there are times where you do have to kind of throw the numbers out and go off the eye test, all right? And this line was one of them, because we kind of knew going into this game that this wasn't going to be the most defensive heavy line that the Flyers have ever had in their entire history. All right? It's just an unfortunate thing that comes from the fact that really the only player there that's stout defensively is Noah Cates, and Alex Bump and Matvei Michkov are both fairly raw players, especially with Michkov being so offensively oriented, that this line looks horrible from a numbers perspective, though they did play a very good game from the eye test. Michkov had an assist on on Cam York's game-winning goal in overtime. Big shout out to Michkov, finally getting himself in the box score. Played an amazing game himself last night, though it wasn't his best, and it's not the best that we've ever seen from him, but I'm confident that that assist is a sign of things to come from him, and that he's going to play better going into this series against Carolina. The other things we need to talk about, Sean Couturier, once again, I'll give you guys a little bit of a closer look at this. Sean Couturier once again steps into the role of arguably the most influential Flyers forward in the entire team. JJ and Scotty said it on the broadcast themselves that Sean Couturier looks like he's playing like he did 14 years ago. Okay, Couturier has been on a warpath. He's been an absolute monster in these series so far, and just in general, he's been an absolute wagon for the Flyers, and he's been one of those guys that you cannot watch any given 2, 3, 4 minute span of Flyers hockey without hearing his name at least once. He's been great defensively. He's produced on offense more than people had ever expected him to, especially given that the line that he's on is not a particularly offense-oriented line, even last night with Forster on it. But he's been an absolute monster. Him and Glendening were both very strong defensively. Forster had a rough game. Looks like he's in a situation where he may need the Michkov treatment of getting sat for a game in order to maybe come back, regroup in his head, come back stronger afterwards. But with the way that this Flyers series versus Carolina could pan out, I don't know if Tocchett's too concerned about that. The other guys that you need to talk about, obviously, Konecny had a game that on the number side looks better than it probably did from the eye test. He's had his iffy moments recently, fanned on a couple of really good opportunities, but overall, the eye test made this Flyers team look great defensively and very, very middling offensively, with very long stretches of not being able to get out of their own zone, not being able to get changes off, especially in the second period where it's incredibly difficult to get changes anyways. Over time, there were long stretches of time where it just looked like the Flyers were kind of sitting back and playing not to lose instead of playing to win, which is a very dangerous flame to handle yourself. But in the end, it did end up working out for them. It looked from my perspective, at least, that Tocchett was actually trying to get that effect across last night against the Penguins, trying to let the Penguins tire themselves out into overtime. But even then, you look at what has happened for this Flyers team, and you think about what the players have been saying afterwards. This team from that series against Pittsburgh, and most importantly that overtime there, have been picking up a ton. And now is when we're going to get into the things that this team has learned and what we've learned about this team, and we need to look forward to going into this next series and even next year. This Flyers team is still in a spot where they are learning a lot about themselves and how they play as a team. All right. Jamie Drysdale himself said that they don't really think that they were playing the same team games 4, 5, and 6. All right. The Penguins came out completely different and had a very different gameplay style and different game plans, and it really shows a lot about the Flyers. They were able to come out on top anyways and adjust to how the Penguins were playing overall. This team is going to be good. Whether or not they're going to make it past the second round this year is fully up in the air. All right. Anything could happen against Carolina. If this team plays up to their offensive potential, they absolutely could beat, they absolutely do have a chance against the Hurricanes. I'm not going to tell you that it's likely. I'm not even going to tell you to count on them winning more than a game. All right. But the opportunity for them to go far is there if they can play up to potential at the maximum. But that's the great part about playing with house money. The Flyers have no expectations right now. All of this growing that they've been doing, the things that they've been taken away from these games, the experiences that they're gaining is amazing, but the Flyers are playing with house money. So it does not matter if they lose because they cannot go any lower. That's the thing. That's, if you've never heard the expression playing with house money before, the Flyers are right now in a position where, since they were not even expected to get into the playoffs and much less expected to beat the Penguins in the first round, being in the second round means that regardless of the outcome of this series, whether they get swept by the Hurricanes or not, or they get swept by the Hurricanes, they win a couple games and lose. If they lose this series, that does nothing negative for this team. They can only get positive things out of this series unless some, like, divine intervention happens and the entire team gets injured. But the Flyers are at a point now where, regardless of the outcome of this series, the only team that has something to lose here is the Hurricanes. If by some miracle the Flyers swept the Hurricanes, woohoo, the Hurricanes are in shambles. If the Flyers get swept, on the other hand, we weren't even supposed to be here. Like, that's the situation that we're in now. And so, especially hearing from some of the older guys on this team, guys like Travis Konecny, about how they're adapting and using this experience and things like overtime to come into later games and show, like, all right, yeah, no, now we understand that we have to try and get momentum swings earlier on. We have to try and adapt this way and do this instead. It shows that this team is growing, and these are amazing, amazing signs to be seeing, especially from a team with so much young talent on it and talent that hasn't seen the playoffs all that much. Couturier especially was another guy that mentioned, or that was asked about things after the game and talking about how everyone on this team has been stepping up and matured the last couple of years. And Couturier's been playing great, obviously leading by example, just like he's been wanting to, but this entire team has been coming together so well and playing so amazingly over their head that it's almost impossible to look at this team and you can be upset about the losses, you can be upset about the way that the power play's been, the lack of forecheck, the times that they've had turnovers in the defensive end, but in the long run, this Flyers team was never meant to be here, and every moment that they're in the playoffs longer is nothing but positive reinforcement. Once again, as always, ladies and gentlemen, if there's anything that I said today that you didn't particularly agree with, that you think that I missed, if you think that I'm an idiot for any particular reason, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Once again, make sure to like these videos and subscribe if you've been enjoying them so far. Anything that you think I missed, please make sure to let me know. I'll try to stick around the comments and talk to you a little bit more. But in the meantime, have a great day. Go Flyers, and I will see you later.